The art of self-reliance is forging your own path, but the path is difficult. Made easier by learning from those who have succeeded in directing their own lives on their own terms. With their help and inspiration, your path to self-reliance moves from dream to reality. And now, here's your host, Dr. Rodney King.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Art of Self-Reliance podcast. My guest for this episode is Kurek Ashley. Tony Robbins has said about my guest, Kurek, you truly are the embodiment of the word outstanding. Kerri Pottharst, Olympic gold medalist, noted that without Kurek, there would be no gold for us. Kurek is a noted expert in personal development, self-discovery, and peak performance, and gives up to 100 presentations a year on these topics. He is also the best-selling author of How Would Love Respond? In this episode, I talked to Kurek about the formula for success and the similarities in all high achievers. We then move on to discussing what's holding people back from succeeding, and finally, the importance of personal transformation in living our best life.
The art of self-reliance calls you to adventure, to develop your self-protection skills, to learn how to survive no matter where you find yourself, and to thrive amongst life's chaos.
All right, so Kurek, here's my first question for you. When you hear the words self-reliance, what does that mean to you?
Well, Dr. Rodney, the thing is, one of my first flip charts that I always put up in my speaking engagements is always that in order for things to change, I must change first. And whenever we have expectations on anyone else, we're already setting ourselves up for pain. Because first, most people don't even know what our rules are. Second is they don't care. And third, some people are actually malicious. So the thing is that when I change, the world around me changes. And if I want people around me to change, you start looking at them differently. And when you change the way you look at people, they will change. But it's always about within ourselves. The only thing that we have power over is working on ourselves. And, when I work with businesses around the world, the first thing I do is always personal development. A lot of them resist. And I go, but you're your business. And then afterwards, and their business grows dramatically after we do the personal development side of it, and then put the business strategies in place. They're always, oh, thank you so much for making me do the personal development.
So that's a really good segue into some of the points we said we would talk about. Part of this idea of personal development and becoming self-reliant is about understanding what is required to be successful. Maybe you can talk us through your ideas around a formula for success. What is that broadly? And then we can break it down and look at what would be the actual steps that somebody would need to take.
When I say the formula, it's not my formula, it's the formula. One of the things that I've been very passionate about my entire life is studying successful people, because I didn't start out that way, and studying unsuccessful people, because then when you see the differences, you can see that there's patterns. And so Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich in 1937, he was writing articles for a newspaper. He got an interview with Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world who owned United States Steel. The man kept him at his house for 5 days, never gave him the interview. Finally, when he did, he said, I'm going to give you a job. You're going to work for me the next 20 years. And he's like, oh my God, this is awesome. He goes, and I'm not going to pay you. And he's like, what? But he said, man, if Andrew Carnegie sees something to me, I'm going to ride with this and see where it goes. He got him interviews with 600 of the most successful people on the planet. I mean, Gandhi and President Truman and Henry Ford and all these different people. And he found out by asking a series of questions that their stories were completely different, but the formula was exactly the same. And so after reading Think and Grow Rich, obviously, and, now it's probably 100 times, and the science of getting rich and all the things I've done in life and just studying people, the formula is very specific. And the first part is that we have to, number one is we have to reinvent ourselves. We can't, and there's a self-reliance thing again. You can't be who you are now and expect different results. So that's based in the law of cause and effect. In that, one of the key principles is that we have to learn how to manage how we think and feel differently, because otherwise we buy into the hallucination that the outside world dictates how we think and feel, and that's when you become a victim. So Dr. Rodney, we all go through the same stuff in life. We all have depression. We all have people who rip you off. You all have family, the weird family, the rest of those things. But successful people, we learn, the global financial crisis, COVID. I mean, we all go through it. But successful people, we learn how to manage it differently. So one of the great examples of that is, a few years ago during the global financial crisis, the media was so excited to report that Warren Buffett lost $4 billion in some of his shares. Of course, he still had like 8 billion left. They forgot to mention that part. But what did he do? Well, he wound up buying more of those shares because he knew they would come back. And he goes, discount on shares today. And not only did he make his 4 billion back, but he made way more than that. See, the average person would panic and sell off and do the rest of those things. So we manage it differently. Next, step number 2 is successful people. Now, by the way, when I mean successful, I mean holistically successful. Health, happiness, love, the rest of those things. The second thing is that we set grand dream goals. We don't set small piddly goals because the goal forces us into growth. And if I'm going to set small piddly goals, well, you're not going to grow very much. So we set grand goals, ones that challenge us. Then we take immediate and consistent action. See, most people, they don't even set goals. Second, why would you take action when you don't set any goals? So you can see there's already a pattern for the 2 groups setting up. Then after taking immediate and consistent action is we test and measure to see, is there any adjustments we need to make? Most people, again, it doesn't work in the first go, they quit. It's not working, I quit. Then networking. See, you ask me would I do an interview there? I say absolutely, because if you're not networking in life, you're not working. I had, and again, I've had a very unique life. I got a text message a couple of years ago by Stallone, because I've been friends with Sylvester Stallone since I was 18 years old. To come have lunch with him in Beverly Hills because he heard I was going to be on stage with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and guess who's at the table? Is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He calls him to have lunch with me. And Arnold, one of the most genuine, wonderful, down-to-earth guys, said, Kurek, most people think I'm a self-made man, and there is nothing farther from the truth. He goes, only weak people try to do it alone. See, networking. And by the way, having friends like Sly and the rest of those things is I'm always interviewing them. I'm always trying to find out what got them here. What did they do? And so we network. The next part is contribution. Is you got to give it away. You got to extend a hand up to other people who need help, because I can tell you my life has been handed to me by people helping me up. They didn't give it to me, but they certainly gave me a hand up and gave me guidance. But they always make sure that you're going to do something with that guidance, right? So they don't give you step number 2 unless you do step number 1. And the last part is follow through. Is the fortune is always in the follow through. So if you're not going to back down from the challenge and you're going to keep moving forward, you will achieve every goal you've ever set for yourself by following this formula. If you look at like Oprah, I know this is going to freak people out, but she's a Black woman in America. Her mom was like 13 years old, gave birth to her. Oprah was molested by a family member. Started off as a local weather girl in some obscure station somewhere nobody ever heard of. Worked on herself, set grand dream goals, took immediate consistent action, followed through all the rest of the things, only become the most powerful person to ever be on TV in the world, right? Didn't back down. And so as you see, you look at her, you look at Stallone, you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, you look at whoever's successful, they follow that formula. I mean, Sly, half his mouth is paralyzed. So he talks like this, right? There's no way that guy should be a movie star, but he's just turned 75 years old last week, and he's been a movie star for 45 years.
So I was thinking as you were talking about that, and maybe you can give us some insight from your own life, because as you noted, you said you weren't always successful. Give us some backstory there, like where were you before you figured this all out, and the steps that you took personally to get to where you are today? Because I think it helps, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, and those are great examples, Sylvester Stallone and Oprah, but a lot of people listening to that go, well, I'm not like them, and I don't have what they have, and I don't think I could ever get there. And there's always this defeatist kind of attitude. But when they hear from other people that are not necessarily always in the limelight, and not somebody that's a name that they are familiar with, they go, okay, you know what? That makes sense. If that person can do it, I could probably do it too.
You know, the thing, Dr. Rodney, is that they're people. You know, I've seen Stallone down. You know, I've seen John Travolta, you know, having drama with his family. Matter of fact, last week his wife just died of breast cancer, and his son in 2012 died. You know, and around that same time, Sly's son died, Sage, who I've known since he was a little boy. You know, their parents, their fathers, you know, it's real. The thing is, I used to live in my car in Los Angeles. I used to call it the Hotel Cadillac because it was a broken down 1972 Coupe de Ville Cadillac. They didn't even run anymore. It wasn't even a mobile home. In my book, How Would Love Respond? You know, I tell a great story where when I first met Travolta doing my first movie with him, I had one line in the movie, by the way. He came to pick me up to dinner at my broken down car. So, I mean, I definitely know what poverty feels like and the rest of those things. In 1989, I was doing a movie with Chuck Norris, rather, called Delta Force 2. And I was involved in a helicopter crash where 5 of my best friends died. My best friend was 29 years old when he died in my arms on fire as I pulled him out of the wreck. So I definitely, you know, for 2.5 years, I had a gun in my mouth every night and drugs up my nose and smoking cigarettes and drinking booze. I wasn't partying. I was just trying to kill myself. Thank God I'm not a success at everything in life. So as you can see, I didn't always have the strategies, but one thing I did have is vision that I want my life to be better and I'm not settling for this. And that's that reinvention that you have to go into, you know, that I don't care how dark it is, you got to be searching for the light. It's biblical. I'm not religious. My mom was Jewish. My dad was Christian. I was just really confused. You know, seek and thou shalt find, you know, look for it and you'll find it. It's easy to look at the world around you and think this is real, but you got to start with that vision. All great achievers were visionaries. We're actually delusional, but the crazy thing is we believe the vision can happen, and that's through self-talk and focusing on it and working on it and reading affirmations and reading positive books and hanging out with positive, successful people instead of the masses who are pissed off and angry, and my partner who sucks and my job that sucks and the rest of those things. So I started going to workshops, even free ones and inexpensive ones. When I was homeless, I was in the library every day. First, air conditioned. They have a bathroom. They have a drinking fountain. If you have a book in your lap, you can actually fall asleep and nobody bothers you, you know. But I would read those books and then I would find a way to make enough money to buy the book because I wanted to highlight it and write in it and the rest of those things. You know, now we have Google and all those things, which every bit of information, YouTube, there's a video on everything you want to succeed. People go, but I don't know how to use YouTube. There's videos on YouTube of how to find videos on YouTube. I mean, it's all there for you. It's never been easier. But you got to start with step one and you got to celebrate. You got to celebrate everything you're doing approximately right. Instead of criticizing yourself for what you're not perfect on or what you haven't mastered yet, is celebrate everything you're doing approximately right, because it makes a neural connection in your brain that this feels good and I want to do it again. And you celebrate and pretty soon you're on this new path, this new journey. And, you know, most people, Dr. Rodney, think that I've lived like 15 lives with all the things that I've done in it. It's just because I'm crazy enough to try new stuff and set myself out there and be willing to fail and the rest of those things, but not give up. And so I look at that formula and I go, okay, what in me needs to change in order for me to produce the result I want? And as soon as you get asked that question, you start going, oh, you know, first I got to, number one, have the right mindset. 2, I got to develop some new skill sets. Wait a minute. What can't you do with the right mindset and skill sets? And how do you do that? Education, application, and follow through.
As you were saying that, I was thinking back on my own life, definitely one of the things that saved me early on as a young teenager was, for whatever reason, I don't know, but I'd always been attracted to books. I'd always had a book in my hand. And that definitely helped me out when I was 17 and I was kicked out of the house by my alcoholic, abusive mother, found myself sleeping on the streets of Johannesburg with nothing. Basically, I had $20 to my name. One book in particular, and I mention this often, even on these podcasts and other interviews, was Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, about choosing your own given attitude in any set of circumstances. And that really stood out for me, that yes, things are really bad here. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get out of this, but what I can do is I can control only the things I can control, which is my own attitude. And that's really what Viktor Frankl alluded to. And I think that's what you're saying as well, right?
And the funny thing about that is the biggest companies in the world these days, they're actually hiring people on attitude, not on skill sets, because they know with the attitude, they'll develop the skill sets. But if you have the skill sets and the wrong attitude, you suck in the position. And they found that out. So it's not the degree anymore. It's the degree of the attitude that we have. I've been training in martial art known as Aikido for the last 12 years. And my sensei always says, is the way we practice is the way you'll participate. So I show up every time, man, with that attitude. And I get thrown hard and I get up off the ground smiling and people go, dude, you're like really dangerous. Like you just got thrown really hard and you're smiling. I go, see, now you know who you're dealing with. It's that attitude. And there's nothing you can't do in life without the great attitude. And Viktor Frankl's book, my whole library in the other room is all personal development. And Viktor Frankl's books is one of those early on reads like you. It was a influential book in my life because, man, this guy put in a concentration camp, watched his whole family die. And he said, I'll be damned, man, if I went through all this, because he marched 50 miles naked where he buried himself under corpses. And they dumped him in a pit with other corpses. And he marched 50 miles naked to get to freedom. And then he winds up getting cancer. And he says, man, there's no way I went through all that to kill me here. And he wound up curing himself of cancer through laughter. That's powerful. I love that book.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And you mentioned martial arts. So that's kind of interesting. That would be the second thing that saved my life, because that was always my interest since I was 6 years old. Luckily, through just working really hard and putting my mind to it and having a vision, as you noted, I created 2 martial arts programs that are now taught in over 15 countries around the world. I mean, that's really what I'm known for, is my martial arts background. So without that, I don't know where I would be, because that taught me about being resilient, having grit, being adaptable. And it keys into one of the things you said earlier, is the ability to be open to failure. Because I think a lot of people don't take on anything because they're afraid to fail. But what they don't realize is that without failure, without setbacks, there is no forward momentum. There's no way to move forward.
Absolutely. Well, Richard Branson, Henry Ford, you go on and on, you listen to all these great leaders. Every one of them has something in there about, man, if you're not failing, you're not doing anything. And matter of fact, if you're not failing in my company, if you're not making mistakes, I don't want you working here because you're not trying anything different. You're not being innovative. So as you see, again, when I study successful people, I look for these consistencies in what they're all saying and the way that they're saying and the real patterns in it. And now being, surrounded by people like that. But I'm looking for the gifts in everybody, because everybody's successful in something. And if you listen to their pattern about how they got successful in whatever it is, it's that same formula.
Yeah, that's very true. So you were talking about these companies and the people that run them, saying if you're not making mistakes, then I don't really want you working for me because you're not innovating, right? And one of the things that I talk to my students about often is, what do I actually want them to be able to achieve? Because they'll ask, well, what is the ultimate outcome here? What do you want to see us do? And I say, well, what I want to see you be able to do is take the tools that I've taught you and be adaptable with it. So no matter where you find yourself, you're able to deploy those tools. But in order to be adaptable, you have to be innovative and you have to come up with creative solutions, right, to new problems, which means that you need a position of creativity. You need to be open to creativity. But what most people don't realize is that in order to be creative, you have to be open to messing up. You have to be open to taking risk, because without taking risk, without messing up, creativity never comes into fruition. So most people think, oh, if you're going to be creative and come up with innovative solutions, that's just a success formula in the sense that no mistakes are made. But in actual fact, if you're not messing up, if you're not, getting tapped out or getting thrown or, losing a particular position or trying something and it doesn't work, and not being open to that, because most people get frustrated and they get down on themselves and then they don't want to try again, right? But you have to be open to come back and say, okay, that didn't work this time. Let me try a different approach. Well, as you do that, now you're being creative. And out of that creative experience, innovation jumps forward into existence. And so you have to be open to failure. And if you're not going to do that, you will never experience creativity, you'll never be innovative, and then you'll never be adaptable.
Spot on. And people always say, I'm an overnight success. It only took me 35 years to get here, right? It's everything. Like, I used to be an actor in Hollywood. I did 38 films. I've done all kinds of different things in my life. None of them are failures, actually. I've even been married 3 times. I don't consider them failures. They just found their expiration date. And I'm very honored by the people I've been able to spend my life with, because some people are in a wheelchair, get nobody. So I never look at it as a failure. It's just a learning experience. And as a soul, we came down to this human form so that you could experience life, which means all of it, not just the fluffy, happy bits. And my belief is that the Creator would never give me a challenge I couldn't handle. And the rewards are always in proportion to the test. So I go, you bring it on, man. Don't give me some small little challenge. You bring it. And, look, I survived the helicopter crash. I'm still here. It's 30 years later. Man, you couldn't take me off the planet then. Well, you keep testing me. I'm here. And because of that, it's, my joy for life, my appreciation, my whole thing is I wake up every morning and when I do, I feel like I've been born. And tonight when I go to sleep, I die. And so it's all about what do I want to do with my life today? But when you make it your first and your last day, every day, you wake up with awe and wonder because of what's coming, and gratitude and appreciation for what you've had. And that's where I live my life every day. And, look, if I didn't succeed, I guess I don't really want to call it a failure, but if I didn't succeed, at least I knew I was trying something. But I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again, same workshop over and over again, same speaking engagement over and over again. All you do is get bored and complacent. That's why I love the movies. It was new, it was different, new locations, new actors, new scripts, the rest of those things. I didn't want to do like Cats on Broadway and do 5,000 shows and stand here, say that. God bless them. It just wasn't me. I wanted the variety of life and do something different. And I'm still here. I started Aikido, by the way, at 47. Most people started at like 14. And, I started with busted up knees. Now I had done other martial arts. I even was lucky enough and fortunate enough to train with Chuck Norris when I was working on Delta Force 2 with him, only to find out he really is a 3-time world champion. And Chuck, I blocked every one of his punches or kicks with my head or body, basically wherever he wanted to put it.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. When you were speaking in the beginning there, I could have put you back in the times of Rome and the Stoic philosophers, because really what you were describing there is a Stoic philosophy, which I very much am in admiration of and try to build that into my life every day. So maybe pivot a little bit here, going to the second thing we would talk about, which I think is really important and builds off everything we've been talking about, is what do you see as holding people back? What is actually holding people back? What are the things that seem to come up all the time?
Dr. Rodney, I know this is going to kind of freak people out, but most people are actually afraid of success. Because whatever we're afraid of, we'll move away from. So if you're afraid of failure, you would actually move towards being successful. But what happens is people have, and you got to remember, I work with hundreds and thousands. I've been in front of over 1 million people on stage. I work with hundreds of thousands of people. I study what's going on. People don't really fear failure. They fear success. Successful people, we actually fear failure. So you got to reverse those poles. The whole Rocky story, he just didn't want to be a bum on the streets. He wanted to make something of himself. He thought that he's going to wind up being nothing. That drove him to be somebody. But people are afraid of, what if I make it and I lose it? Or what if people find out that I'm not perfect, or that I have flaws? Or what if I get there and I lose all my friends? Because, so it's a fear of this perception, because there is no truth in life. There's only interpretation. So it's all based in perception. So, and by the way, that was me, growing up, my mom was an alcoholic. My stepfather was an alcoholic. They were very physically abusive, torturous. My own brothers and sisters didn't like me very much because I was known as the weird one. I was the weird guy in the family. We wound up moving to an upper class neighborhood, but here we were dressed like bums, and, cops were at our house because of the violence and the rest of those things. So, rich kids can be brutal to you, when you're not the rich kid, and you're the garbage of the neighborhood. So I created a belief system that when you had money, it makes you a jerk. You treat people bad and you think you're better than everybody else. Then 18 years old, I head to Los Angeles from Chicago, and I literally drive my 1967 Chevy Impala, which was eaten out by cancer rust, across the Beverly Hills, the sign you see, welcome to Beverly Hills. As soon as my car passes, I get pulled over by the Beverly Hills Police Department saying, "Hey, boy, what are you doing in our neighborhood?" And I go, "I'm just going to see Rodeo Drive, rather." And he goes, "No, you're not." And I go, "Yeah, I am." And he goes, "No, we don't like people like you in our neighborhood. Get out." I'm like, "What do you mean get out?" I said, "I'm an American citizen. What are you talking about?" He goes, "If you don't turn around, I'm going to beat you with my nightstick and take you to jail." And I go, "For what?" And he goes, "I'll make up a charge. Don't worry about it. Turn your car around and get out." So, hey, making money makes you a jerk. Well, 1983, I'm doing my first movie with John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, called Two of a Kind. One of the actors on the set is an Academy Award nominated actor called Charles Durning, who's like, you see him in a million movies. I wind up I'm living in my car at this point. I get an audition for a movie starring Jack Lemmon and Charles Durning, and I'm the third lead. I don't even know how they found out about me. Anyways, I go into the office, they get my script to read. They said, Charles Durning insisted. He said, "You're one of the finest young actors he's ever seen. You are the role. So you got to audition." And great. I don't read my script. I don't practice my scenes. I go and do the worst scene ever. Why? Because I thought if I make money, now it's subconscious, by the way, if I make money, I'm going to become a jerk. Not only did I embarrass myself, I embarrassed Charles Durning. And when I showed up on the set the next day, man, I got both barrels from him. And now the director's pissed off at me because I pissed off one of his stars. I mean, it was a nightmare. And here I'm living in my car. So why would a guy self-sabotage himself when this would have changed my life, got me out of my car, made money? Because I believed. And then I'll tell you, is 1984, I'm doing my second movie with John Travolta called Perfect with Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm now making lots of money. And I go into a restaurant. I have an altercation with a waitress who just got a bad attitude. And it comes out of my mouth, "Don't you know who I am? I'm doing a movie with John Travolta. You're just a loser waitress." And there I am. I became a jerk. And guess what? Before that movie was over, I was already broke again because I was spending money. I was just trying to get rid of it subconsciously. So as you see, that perception of fear of what you can become what I call an approach avoidance system, where you bounce off it and we self-sabotage. So we got to reverse those poles and talk about, man, if I don't improve myself, what's the worst case scenario that can happen? And then what's the great stuff that can happen when I do work on myself and change? Obviously, I don't treat people like that. It was a one-off thing, but it was enough to literally create an approach avoidance system because of the history that I created and a fear of success.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people do have that fear of success. And I can see where that comes in, especially if you've got a lot of hangups, right? A lot of things from your past. And I think we can both talk to that definitely one thing that I've realized later on in life is how I react to things now are situated back in my past as a child, and how much the experience I had as a child, which was not pretty and was not a fun experience, just as it was for you, ends up becoming your worst enemy later on in life, especially when you're now trying to make a change.
Well, Dr. Rodney, I don't know anybody who's really had the perfect childhood, or the perfect family. And if you did, well, then you're going to find your problem somewhere else, because that's not real life. I was really fortunate when I was 15 years old. I got to go backstage and hang out with Ricky Nelson, "Hello, Mary Lou," and man, I idolized this guy, and what a really wonderful guy. Well, he grew up on a TV show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, the perfect American family. Dad came to dinner with a tie, and mom cleaned the house, but was always looking perfect. Hair was never out of place. But I also managed, 18 years later, I managed his twin sons and took them to quadruple platinum. Ricky died in a plane crash a number of years earlier. Their life wasn't anything like the TV show. It wasn't their all-American family. So my point being is that we have this map of the world in our head of what's supposed to be perfect. And then when it doesn't match up to that, we want to label it like mine's messed up or whatever it is. One of my little Kurekisms is that you always get what you ask for. It just rarely comes in the package you thought it was supposed to show up in. My life experiences have turned me into who I've always wanted to become. And because it formed me. I don't judge it. My mom, my dad, my stepfather, all that stuff, they were doing the best they could with the skills and tools they have. But just because they're parents doesn't make them an expert in parenting. Just because you pop out of the womb, there's no owner's manual tapped to your leg, or by the way, your mom's pretty thrilled with that. You were enough of a hassle coming out. Excuse me. So, and now being a parent, I talk with my son and I said, look, buddy, just because I'm your dad doesn't make me an expert. I'm just working every day. I wake up and it's a new chapter. I'm trying to figure out life itself. I'm trying to do it my own fears and doubts and insecurities because everybody's got them. Everybody's got them. We just think everybody else is all perfect. And then you talk to them and they're like, oh, I thought you were the calm, cool, collective one. Like, oh, that's crazy. I thought you were. So, we came down here. We chose the family we wanted in our own weird way. And, you want to be the guy you are and helping all the people that you're helping these days if you didn't go through those experiences. Because, man, if you don't know what dark's like, you will never experience light and appreciate it. So the law of polarity, it's a law of physics. Both exist. They're two sides of the same coin. And look what we've done with it. By the way, we got the same haircut. So we can put our heads together, make a perfect ass out of ourselves.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just as you were saying that, I mentioned the Stoics and people like Marcus Aurelius, his book, the Meditations. If you look in those books, what always stands out for me is, hold on a second, the things that we say we struggle with today is the same things they were struggling with back then. I mean, if you can go back all the way thousands of years, the same thing comes up. If you look at the mythological stories and you read Homer's Iliad and any of those kind of perennial works, you find time and time again that everything we are saying right now that we're struggling with, they struggled with too. So it's as old as time, right? So that kind of gives us a hint to that it's nothing unique. And in actual fact, the fact that they had to struggle with it and they overcame it means that we can too.
Well, you read the Bible, and I always say that nothing's changed in 2,000 years. Jesus himself was pissed off near the end where, he goes, hey, I told you how to do it. And you're not doing it for yourself. I taught you how to fish, not me hand you a fish. And he's very angry about it. Nothing's really changed. There's some people who get it, a lot of people who don't. There's some people who change the world. There's a lot of people who wait for it to be changed. So as the person that I am, I know what my mission is. It's to be one of the people who helps facilitate change. I'm not here to teach content. I'm here to help facilitate change, not to fix people because nobody's broken. They are exactly where they're supposed to be. It's for the people who want to be different, who want their situation to be different. And that's what but the neat thing about yourself and myself is that we're not book taught. We really went through the real thing. So, I know what drug addiction is. I know what suicide's like. I know what poverty's like. I know what busted up marriages are like, the rest of the things. So when I work with people, I'm the real deal. I've been there. I didn't learn this in a book, but I use it in my own life. And even when I go through challenges in life, I tell my clients, I go, look, this is a great time to coach with me. And they go, why? I go, because you're going to see how I handle it. It's life. The last chapter of my book is called The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Publisher, because another catastrophe happened in my life as I was finishing the book. So I decided to write it in real time and use what's in the book to turn this situation around as well. And people read it and they go, oh my God, man, I've never seen an author be so honest before and tell you that, yeah, doo-doo's still going to hit the fan. Now, what are you going to do with it?
Mm. So that's a good pivot point for our final thing we said we would talk about is just, I think it's kind of bringing everything together, right? When we talk about personal transformation, what do you want people to take from that? Because I think a lot of times when people want to make the changes that they want to make, they feel completely overwhelmed. You say, create big, audacious goals. And I think that's really important. But a lot of people are like, even the idea of doing that freaks them out. So oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I always say, start where you can, right? So even the smallest things, the things that are the mundane, the things you take for granted, if you get those things right, a lot of the other things start falling into place, and it gives you even a small level of confidence. Just waking up every morning, I know it sounds ridiculous, but waking up every morning and making sure that where you wake up is orderly, clean, made your bed, you start the day off on the right foot, that is also part of personal transformation. Because I think sometimes when a lot of people, you say, go on YouTube and it's great, and you hear people talking, but they're talking huge. And for a person who's really struggling and really starting at ground zero, they go, there's no way I can do that. But if they just start on the things that they take for granted, the small things, That is a start. And that is also personal transformation, right?
Sure. Well, I actually don't say big goals. I say grand dream goals. So they're not about size or expense. They're about the goals that give you the most amount of joy to experience. They're ones that will stretch you, So they can be big and they can be expensive, but that's not the criteria. It's the goals that will give you the most amount of joy to experience. And there's three things we need to know in life: where we are, where we want to be, and what's the first step. Don't worry about the plan. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, because life doesn't go to plan. It's a waste of time. What's the first step? And do that first step and complete it, because excellence is the commitment to completion. And, just like you said, is study successful people. We all have a morning routine. Why? Because, man, if you don't, people will be happy to throw their garbage inside your tank inside you because it's empty. It's like trying to fly your plane and go, man, I'm so busy flying, I didn't put any fuel in it. Well, you're going to crash. So the first thing I do is I get up, I read affirmations, I work on myself, I do some reading, I do some meditation, I certainly do some exercise. And because of that, you literally turn on your system at a level where life doesn't pound on you as much, because you're already turned on. You're not waiting for life to beat on you. Then you're going to try to turn yourself on. It's too hard. But also, as you're on a different frequency, we're going to attract different things on that frequency, because whatever, it's the law of vibration. And then there's a law of the frequency of vibration. And then there's a law of the harmony of frequency of vibration, which would be known as the law of attraction. So whatever frequency we're on, we're going to attract what's on that frequency. So the first thing I do in the morning is get myself on a certain frequency, instead of, just letting whatever happens in life take its place and beat the daylights out of you. And because of that, when you're on that frequency, you'll notice that more positive people want to be around you, more things that happen. And then you got to walk through that next door, whatever that is, that next opportunity, and do it excellent again. So you may not get it all done, but do this step excellent. And then the key is, and I'll tell you, this is the biggest thing ever, and it sounds like the American me, but it's not, is you got to celebrate. You got to train your brain that this is a great step. It's just like the dog does a trick, give him a treat. Dog does a trick, give him a treat. Well, no wonder he wants to keep doing a trick. He gets the treat. So treat yourself through celebration, that this is awesome. I took one step, celebrate. And I mean outwardly. Pretty soon you want to do it. Then it becomes your habit to keep taking a step forward. And then pretty soon you look at your life and you're like, oh my goodness, how different am I? And it wasn't even that long. Then all of a sudden it's different. So after 2.5 years of having a gun in my mouth after a helicopter crash and 5.5 grams of cocaine in my nose every night, and weed and booze and all this, I was in a dark place. Little by, one day I had to draw a line in the sand. I literally unscrewed a broom pole and cut a line in the sand with my makeshift samurai sword, my broom pole, And I said, once I step over the line, man, I'm done. I gave up cocaine. I gave up cigarettes. I gave up alcohol abuse. I gave all my guns away, not to just people wandering down the street. I gave them, friends of mine. And then, but I still had to deal with the helicopter crash. I still had to deal with what I was going through. But man, I started working on myself. So every morning, I get up 4 a.m. I take a walk through the neighborhood. I lived in a residential neighborhood in LA. I would pose myself a question that I wanted answered, something about growth. I'd hit the park. I'd do some pull-ups, some push-ups, sit-ups. By the time I got home on my walk, the question was always answered. Then I'd read. Then I'd do some affirmations, and I'd read some goals and rest of those things. And man, it wasn't that far, and then a couple of weeks later, wow, I'm feeling better, and then a little better, and then wow, better. And then pretty soon you're back, it's one step, but celebrate.
All of this comes down to choosing your own attitude, which is really what we've talked about throughout the whole interview. I refer to this as the competing selves model, because if everybody's honest with themselves and they look inside, there are 3 selves. There's a self that's always pulling you back. There's a self that wants the best for you and wants you to move forward. And then there's a self that's just neutral. And so the choice really comes down to who you're going to listen to, because there is always that self that wants you to move forward, but most people don't listen to that one. And so if you just make that choice in that moment in time to choose that self, the one that wants you to move forward, that is the start of really making some inroads into your life and changing things. And then each time you have another obstacle, you're going to have those 3 selves. And each time you're going to have to ask yourself, who am I going to talk to? That's kind of, lends to what you're saying about self-talk, is that we're always talking to ourselves inside, But we also then have a choice on who to listen to, because we can listen to the person that always wants to pull us back, or we can listen to the person that wants us to move forward.
Yes, and Dr. Rodney, I would say is the challenges in society. We have a society that rewards people for being in drama. That's why reality TV is so big, and the Kardashians and and so they feel like that attention that they get from being in pain, from being in drama, they translate to being love. But then you got to get more and more drama to keep getting the same level of attention or more attention. That's not the group I want to be in. It's a self-love issue, because nobody would smoke cigarettes if they really loved themselves. Nobody would, stick drugs in your arms or allow yourself to stay poor when you love yourself. So the name of my book is How Would Love Respond? If you identified yourself as love, how would you respond differently in every situation?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So to end off, Kurek, final words of motivation. What would you want to leave people with as they come to the end of our discussion?
Start every day with gratitude. When you realize your very worst day in life is somebody else's very best, it humbles you. And, the world always shows me people, whenever I'm having an off moment, God always puts another person in front of me to remind me just how lucky I am. Person in a wheelchair or something, and so I wake up every morning, I'm just grateful, including for my challenges in life and, marriages that ended. I'm grateful that I even, hey, I was in Singapore. I sold out the indoor stadium only to come home and have them stop payment on my check, the promoters, and rip me off for $250,000. I was grateful. Why? I used to live in my car. $2.50 used to be like a week's worth of food. So, man, I'm at a level where you can rip me off at that level. I must be somebody. And I still have a great life. But also I thought about all the people's lives that I changed and all the friends that I made and the experiences I had. All of a sudden outweighed the money any day week. But if we're focused on the past, we only can create limited. If we're focused on the future, we can create limitless. So be a visionary on where you want to go in life and hold on to that vision so strong that you turn it into a reality.
To learn more about the art of self-reliance, our virtual coaching service, online courses, and our retreats in Thailand, head over to Primal Skills. That's with a Z.com.